Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijanna Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Dhirodatta Amura Dhirodatta Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayanda Dati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Dinabhando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpatarubhascha kripa sindhu bevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Ramachaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nastaprishu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. All right, that's class for today. My voice is finished. It was short, but it was good. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 27, Attack by Chandabhega on the city of King Puranjana, and the character of Kala Kanya. Today, text 18. Sa'iva Puryam Madhubok Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Kringnan Strijito Navidad Bhayam Sa'iva Puryam Madhubok Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinan Strijito Navidad Bhayam Saiva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinam Strijito Navidad Bhayam. Please chant.
Saiva Puryam Madhubuk
Saiva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinam Strijito Navidad Bhayam. Saiva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinan Strijito Navidad Bhayam. Saiva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Balim Grinan Srijito Navidad Bhayam. Saiva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai
Upanitam Balim Grinan
Saiva
Puryam Madhubhu
Saiva Puryam Madhubhuk
Amchaleshu Swaparshadai
Amsaleshu Saparshadai
Upanitam Balim Grinan
Upanitam Balim Grinan
Srijito Navidad Bayam
Srijito Navidad Bayam. Pretty good. Practice makes perfect. The more you chant, the better you get. The synonyms, please repeat. Saha, he, eva, certainly. Puryam, within the city. Madhubhuk, enjoying sex life. Panchaleshu, in the kingdom of Panchala. 5 sense objects. Pancha means 5, and then so that's an analogy that the kingdom of Panchala, the city of King Paranjana, is the body, and the 5 sense objects are the constituents of that kingdom. So Parshadai, along with his followers, Upanitam, brought, Valim, taxes, Grinan, accepting, Strijitaha, conquered by women, Na, did not, Vavidat, understand, Vayam, fear of death. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. King Paranjana collected taxes in the city is known as Panchala, and thus was able to engage in sexual indulgence. I guess it means he had enough money, he could afford it. He collected taxes, had a nice palace, and he got the right conditions. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. Wow. Translation, please repeat. King Paranjana collected taxes in the city known as Panchala, and thus was able to engage in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand his life, that his life was passing away. And that he was reaching the point of death. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Government men, including kings, presidents, secretaries, and ministers, are in a position to utilize taxes collected from the citizens for sense gratification. It is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam that in this Kali Yuga government men, Rajanas, and those connected with the government, as well as exalted government ministers, secretaries, and presidents, will all simply collect taxes for sense gratification. The government is top-heavy, and without increasing taxes, the government cannot maintain itself. When the taxes are collected, they are utilized for the sense gratification of the government officials. Such irresponsible politicians forget that there is a time when death will come to take away all their sense gratification. And some of them, we're hoping that moment will be very soon. Some of them are convinced that after life, everything is finished. This atheistic theory was conceived long ago by a philosopher called Charvaka. Charvaka recommended that man should live very opulently, either by begging, borrowing, or stealing. He also maintained that one should not be afraid of death, the next life, the past life, or an impious life, because after the body is burnt to ashes, everything is finished. Wrong. This is the philosophy of those who are too much materially addicted. Such philosophizing will not save one from the danger of death, nor will it save one from an abominable afterlife in which they do not believe. Very conveniently. Otherwise, if they knew the truth, they might change their tune a little bit. Hey, computer. The Eva Puryam Madhubuk Panchaleshu Saparshadai Upanitam Bahim Grinan Strijito Navidad Bhayam. King Puranjana collected taxes in the city known as Panchala and was thus able to engage in sexual indulgence. Being completely under the control of women, he could not understand that his life was passing away and that he was reaching the point of death. Mukham karoti bacharam angam lagayate girit Bande Paramananda Madhava Sigurum Dilatarinum. So there's a theme of this chapter, and it's amazing how Srimad Bhagavatam enlightens us and gives us practical knowledge and transcendental knowledge, spiritual knowledge, which you will not find if you go searching through the knowledge books of human society. You will not find this level or this depth of truth and of understanding. And it is very hard hitting. The Bhagavatam is very hard hitting. It is not for the faint of heart. Krishna consciousness is not for the faint of heart. Because understanding the real situation of the eternal spirit soul within this material body and rotating through the various species of life, birth after birth, it is a lamentable condition for the spirit soul. It is not one of happiness and bliss by any stretch of the imagination. So someone may think, someone who is not advanced in transcendental knowledge or someone who is not Krishna conscious may think, well, why all this talk about, the body and death? That's just the way life is. You from the cradle to the grave, you do the best you can, and then it's over, and you're gone, and that's it. There ain't no more to that. It's done. So, why worry? I believe the character who was the emblem of Mad Magazine, Alfred E. Newman, his motto was, what, me? Worry? Yeah, that's the philosophy. Just like Prabhupada mentions here, the philosophy, the atheistic philosophy of Charvaka Muni. And Prabhupada summarizes that, and he refers to it many places in his writing. That philosophy is summarized by beg, borrow, or steal, but whatever you do, get ghee. Because ghee is very opulent and it's very flavorful. And so one should have food cooked in ghee only. And don't worry, there is no next life. There is no past life. There are no reactions. Once your body is burnt to ashes, which traditionally in many cultures, the body was cremated. Once the body's burnt to ashes, that's it, you're done. There's nothing else. There's nothing more. As we are fond of quoting here, the shloka from our childhood exposure to advertising on TV sporting events, the Schlitz commercial. Schlitz was a big beer back in the 60s and 70s. I don't think they even exist anymore. Yeah. But there's the sailboat, like the clipper ship type sailboat with the big sails, real Moscow mat. macho, masculine kind of thing, the guy on the deck, and then the voice comes with the announcer. You only go round once in life, so you have to grab for all the gusto you can. Exact words of the commercial. The shlokas you learn when you're a child, they remain with you. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, Komarat achayat pragyo dharman bhagavata iha durlabam manushan janma. What's the last line? Tadapya dhruva artadam. That one should begin Krishna consciousness, Komara achayat pragyo, from the very tender age of childhood. Just like we see in the person of our Parikshit, he's beginning Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. And his life is what? Running around the temple, creating mischief. But it's all in the context of Krishna consciousness. Although he doesn't maybe particularly realize it. But that is the most auspicious way for a child to begin the life. And Prahlad Maharaj says this should be for everyone, because the human form of life, durlabam manusham janma, this human birth, it is difficult to achieve. Not everyone is getting a human form of life. How many termites are there in the world? It's one of the largest species, scientists inform us, that there's billions and zillions of termites. And one time I was staying in one of the little houses at the Dallas Temple. That house has now been raised, and the parking lot was built. Parking lot for the restaurant and the temple. And those old houses, they had crawl spaces under the houses. They didn't even have foundations. They didn't have concrete foundations. And then the house is built about that far off the ground. There's a crawl space, so you have to go under if the pipes break or this or that. And they were subject to many different types of living entities. And one of them that I encountered was mites, mites, mites. And they tend to bite you around the belt line, especially at night while you're asleep. Makes me itch just thinking about it. And so I went to the library. That was before the internet. And I went to the local Lakewood branch of the public library to look up mites. So I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of these things. And the article, I think it was the Encyclopedia Britannica they had, said that mites live everywhere. They're in the highest latitudes of the Himalayas. There are even mites that float in the air at subarctic temperatures at 25,000 feet in the Himalayas, and they live in the tropics, and they're everywhere. And they certainly were in that house biting me. So we had to bomb the house with insecticide to get rid of them. It worked. I encountered that same phenomenon of mites. There was devotees had a preaching center house in Tampa, Florida. And I stayed in one room, and sure enough, it had mites. And so then I went to Orlando, and there was another devotee preaching house, had these Sankirtan houses, and no one was there. And the mites were still getting me. And so I was trying to figure out how to get rid of them. And I remember when I was a kid in high school, they used to have sometimes lice. There'd be an epidemic of lice in the high school. And it gets in your hair, and it's real nasty stuff. And there was a shampoo called Quell that you could get by prescription only. That you had to wash your hair. My hair was, down to here. You had to wash your hair with the medicated shampoo because the lice, they lay eggs in your hair. They're called nits, and then those hatch and become more lice. You ever seen pictures of the Africans with the mothers picking the lice out of the baby's hair and then they pop them in their mouth. So I was in the house in Winter Park, Florida, and there was no one there. I was by myself, fortunately, so no one else had to have this problem. And I just got out the phone book. Again, before the internet, they had telephone books. And I just looked and I found a Dr. Patel. So I called him up. People used to answer the phone in those days too. And I said, Dr. Patel, Hare Krishna. My name is Dhirodatta Das. I'm with the Hare Krishna movement. I seem to have contacted some mites and I need a prescription for Quell shampoo. He says, all right, very good. You don't have to come in. Just give me your pharmacy and I will get the prescription to them. So they got the prescription and then I washed the sleeping bag and all my clothes and everything in hot water with bleach. So I got rid of the mites, which are all pervasive. All this by way of trying to entertain you and keep you awake, but to understand that there are many, many other species of life other than the human form of life that are much more numerous and pervasive in the world. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, Komaret acharet pragyo dharman bhagavatamiha durlabam manusham janma. That this human life, durlabam, it's not easy to get a human birth. It's achieved only after rotating through all the 8,400,000 species of life. So most of the living entities that are present in the world are not human beings, the vast majority. Although it seems as though the population of the earth is increasing, although we hear in Krishna book about, quadrillions of bodyguards and things like that. Apparently they exist in other dimensions. But the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, which was spoken before the present Kali Yuga, makes predictions about what conditions will be like in the Kali Yuga. And it said the earth will become crowded with humanish or human-like creatures, people, but who are less than animals in their lifestyle and habits. Get some mail delivered to the Vyasa. How nice is that? Life is good around here. I'm going to read a little bit from some of those verses in the 12th canto. And they're a lot of fun, but they're also very scary. But we can see how some of the things mentioned there have not waited till the end of the Kali Yuga to manifest, but that are going on right now in front of our very eyes as we live in the 21st century. These are some of the qualities that you'll find in the Kali Yuga. Men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend upon deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's expertise in sex, and a man will be known as a Brahmana just by wearing a thread. One who is initiated as a Brahmana should have the qualities of a Brahmana. And one who practices Krishna consciousness develops those qualities, both automatically and by intent and practice. So, but someone will be a Brahmana just because they're born in a Brahmin family or just because they have a thread on their body. A person's spiritual position will be ascertained merely according to external symbols. That makes me think of some organized religions that have very nice outfits. complete with crowns and robes and filigree and such. Anyone ever been to the Vatican or seen the video? And on that same basis, people will change from one spiritual order to the next. A person's propriety will be seriously questioned if he does not earn a good living. And one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. Prabhupada, there's one recording where Prabhupada's talking about this, and he says that these scholars will speak in such a way that they bewilder people, because they're bewildering people by their juggling of words, and then the people are very impressed. Oh, he is very highly smart and educated. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, and they will say words like, and then he says this series of nonsense syllables. And then people, oh. And sometimes they say, oh, he's speaking in tongues. But we also speak in tongues. Well, we speak in tongue. That tongue is Sanskrit, which is the real original language of the demigods and of learned civilizations. A person will be judged unholy if he does not have money. And hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue. Wow. Marriage will be arranged simply by verbal agreement, and a person will think he is fit to appear in public if he has merely taken a bath. But nowadays people think that they're fit to appear in public and they have not taken a bath. Nor will they be taking one anytime soon. A sacred place will be taken to consist of no more than a reservoir of water located at a distance. Oh, it's far away. It's a place of pilgrimage. And beauty will be thought to depend on one's hairstyle. Filling the belly will become the goal of life. And one who is audacious will be accepted as truthful. He who can maintain a family will be regarded as an expert man. And the principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. Let's see, I missed a couple here. Prabhupada refers to the word Rajanya in the purport. That's from the 40th verse of the chapter 1 of the 12th canto. Asamskrita kriyahina rajasa tamasavitaha rajaste vaktrayishanti malecha rajana rupinaha. Not purified by any Vedic rituals and lacking in the practice of regular principles, barbarians in the guise of kings will be completely covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. And what's missing from the translation? Praja te bhaksha shintanti, they will virtually devour the citizens and harass the citizens. Then, O king, Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali. As the earth becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. Losing their wives and properties to such avaricious and merciless rulers who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. Harassed by famine and excessive taxes, people will resort to eating leaves, roots, flesh, wild honey, fruits, flowers, and seeds. Struck by drought, they will become completely ruined. The citizens will suffer greatly from cold, wind, heat, rain, and snow. They will be further tormented by quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease, and severe anxiety. By the time the age of Kali ends, the bodies of all creatures will be greatly reduced in size, and the religious principles of followers of Varnashram will be ruined. The path of the Vedas will be completely forgotten in human society, and so-called religion will be mostly atheistic. The kings will be mostly thieves. The occupations of men will be stealing, lying, and needless violence. And all the social classes will be reduced to the lowest level of Shudras. I'm fond of quoting that Led Zeppelin song. They're talking about a scorned woman. Lying, cheating, hurting, that's all you seem to do. So, already they have noted these qualities of Kali Yuga. Cows will be like goats. Spiritual hermitages will be no different from mundane houses. And family ties will extend no further than the immediate bonds of marriage. Most plants and herbs will be tiny, and all the trees will appear like dwarf shami trees. Clouds will be full of lightning, homes will be devoid of piety, and all human beings will have become like asses. At that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth. Acting with the power of pure spiritual goodness, he will rescue eternal religion. Very nice description. And if someone is thinking, oh, I may not go back to Godhead this life, but let me take another birth, and then I will preach. I will help Prabhupada spread the movement. And then the devotee asks that, Prabhupada, if a devotee does not become fully Krishna conscious in this life, and then he has to take another birth, will you come back to help him, to save him? And Prabhupada said, don't make me come back. In other words, don't count on not making it. Don't count on not being successful. And then force the spiritual master to come back and save you. But he did say that, yes, the spiritual master and the relationship with the disciple is eternal. And so the spiritual master may appear in another life to the disciple in one way or another. It may come in the form of a reminder from a devotee, getting a book or something else that happens. That may have happened to many devotees in our movement in this life, and they haven't finished. Prabhupada was fond of saying that he regarded all his disciples as having been sent by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to assist him, indicating that in their previous life they were devotees, and now they've come again to assist Srila Prabhupada and spreading the Yuga Dharma. That sounds pretty good. And therefore, some persons, when they came to Krishna consciousness, immediately they became like stunningly amazing devotees just at the drop of a hat. So this idea that the Bhagavatam, it is so heavy. All this talk about death and sex life, and the two are very closely related, by the way, if you haven't picked up on that. Why so heavy? But if we turn to Bhagavad Gita in chapter 13, which is text 8 through 12. Krishna explains what is knowledge and what is ignorance. So let's listen to a little bit to the Sanskrit of these verses. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham staryam atma vinigraha indriyarteshu vairagyam anahankara evacha janma mritya jara vyadi dukkha doshana darshanam. There's more. I'll just read some of the English. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, and self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, and here we go, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, non-attachment to children, wife, home, and the rest, and even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, resorting to solitary places, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I thus declare to be knowledge, and what is contrary to these is ignorance. Definitive statements by Krishna, and especially we see in there this Janma Mrityu. I have one. Today's verse talking about being controlled by women, and the women will say, well, "What's wrong with that? We're in charge." Like I said, I'm fine until I start talking. Krishna's trying to get me to observe the Mona Brata. But when giving Bhagavatam class, one cannot simply sit silently and expect everyone to absorb by osmosis these important teachings. So Janma Mritya Jara Vyadi Dukkha Doshana Darshanam. Perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. It's not just, hey, it's the way it is, it happens to everybody, own it, face up to it, get used to it. It's all you got. But no, there is much more to our existence. And to actually understand that this is our conundrum, we're caught in this cycle of birth and death, old age and disease. We're suffering and we don't like it. So, what to do about it? One should engage in the philosophical search for the absolute truth, and one should cultivate a Krishna consciousness. Through sadhana and following regular principles and living a very regulated life, especially rising very early, maintaining cleanliness, chanting the holy name of the Lord. These are it's a very powerful prescription for counteracting our difficulty and our misery, and ultimately understanding the truth of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our eternal relation to Him in the compact of love. These are the keys to ending these miseries, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. That when you understand the truth of Janma, Karma, Tame Divyam, the transcendental nature of Krishna's appearance in this world and his activities, then upon quitting this material body, you do not take birth again. So And outside of this process, there's no possible way to attain this goal, this destination. And to awaken our love for Krishna. You can't do it some other way. There's not a different path to achieve it. There are many different paths to achieve many different things. As the Mayavadis are fond of saying, Yatamat Tatapat. All the paths are the same, they all lead to the same goal. But that's not a fact. There are different roads that lead to different destinations. And according to your destination, you have to follow the proper road, the proper path. So there's a proper way of doing things. The British have a way of using the word proper in a very nice way. It's like, in other words, to do something right, they say proper. Like you have to live in a proper apartment, a proper flat, not some, shack by the side of the road, but it has to be proper. So one has to accept a proper spiritual master and follow his instructions and chant one's japa properly, not in some half-hearted, neglected way, but seriously, sincerely, and focused. Very focused. That is also given in Bhagavad Gita. Vyavasayatmika buddhir. Ekeha kuranandana. One has to be single-minded and fixed. Ekeha. Eka means one. One-pointed. One-pointed attention. Fixed up in Krishna consciousness. Then one is properly situated. One is a proper Vaishnava. And one can make progress on the path back home to Godhead. All right, so we'll stop here. Before I cough myself to death. And any questions, comments, or realizations?
Just a quick comment. George Harrison had that song, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there." So that's kind of like, the Mayavad.
Yeah, and he's making fun of those who do not know where they're going. So they can do anything. It doesn't matter what they do because they don't know where they're going. So for them, everything's the same because they're rushing headlong to their next body and they don't have any idea. All right, so. I thought you got the microphone.
I had a question. I was just someone see something this report.
We see, like, we're hearing that, the materialists are bewildered by sense gratification and they don't see that imminent death is coming. And, but also sometimes it seems like, we see devotees that are struggling or that are, engaging in nonsense activities. And it's like they've heard so much. In a sense, you ask them, they know death is coming, but still they're, there's that need to engage in useless sense gratificatory activities. How do we address or think about that or see that?
That's ignorance. Ignorance is not just a lack of book knowledge. One can be very learned in the books, in the scriptures, and still be covered by ignorance. Because ignorance is a condition of the heart. And this ignorance is a covering of Maya that Prabhupada explains it. It fills the living entity with a sense of godlessness. With this sense of godlessness, it's like the Australian Outback Steakhouse. There are no rules, just right.
Just right.
Right. No rules, just right, mate. So when one's heart is covered by ignorance, then there are no rules, just sense gratification. And that can afflict someone who is especially who's not fixed up in proper Krishna consciousness by executing all the rules and regulations and living properly according to the order of the spiritual master. So naturally, one will not be situated nicely and one will deviate. And then one will think, no rules, just right. No restriction from sense gratification, just enjoy. And that is godlessness, because you don't care. Oh, well, that will impede me. That will lead me to some lower destination. That will cause me to take an undesirable birth after this life. So, no rules? Oh, yes, there are rules. It is science. You gave the example the other day of science, A plus B equals C. There's actually 2 plus 2 equals 4. A plus B equals C is that's the concoction of science. A can be anything, B can be anything, and C can be anything. But 2 plus 2 equals 4. That is science. And it is axiomatic principle that it holds true. So if one doesn't scientifically execute Krishna consciousness, then one does not get the proper result. It's like a chemical reaction and you're not mixing the chemicals in the proper proportion, or you're using the wrong chemicals, then the result is different. That's science. So if we don't practice Krishna consciousness nicely, then how we expect we'll get the right result? And if you keep doing the same old things wrong, then how can you expect to get a different result than that wrong result? That's unrealistic. But that's what Maya does. That's why our hearts, we're coming from a position of our hearts are covered with ignorance. In Krishna consciousness practice, it cleanses the heart and removes that covering of ignorance. And then we can see what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. But if we don't follow the process, don't expect to go back to Godhead if you don't follow the process. It's science. You do something else outside of the prescribed activities of Krishna consciousness, you'll get some other result according to whatever that activity is, but it won't be going back home, back to Godhead. So we have to take that to heart to keep ourselves centered in the lane of Krishna consciousness. And the association of devotees is very helpful for that. Not only helpful, it's required. We have to have the association of devotees. And if we associate with those who are not devotees in some kind of close way, then that contamination of those who are not devotees, it rubs off on us. And it makes us veer from our lane. Arjuna talks about that. Even unwillingly, how come one acts sinfully? Even unwillingly, almost like by force. Because of association, the wrong association. But the right association keeps one enlivened and reminded. Stay in your lane. Stay within the shelter of the instruction of the Guru. And then you will get all good results. And Krishna said, anything else outside of that, I declare to be ignorance. So, it's a little heavy, but that's the glory of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it informs in no uncertain terms of the facts of life in the material world and what is the solution. So we should be eager to accept that solution. After all, we've been suffering in these material bodies since time immemorial, billions of births. After billions of births, an enlightened devotee could say to a materialist, well, you still doing that? You're still doing that birth and death? Come on, man, wake up. Aren't you tired of that by now? Aren't you tired of all that anxiety, all that misery? And what to speak of, the bad leaders and the bad consciousness and the bad sound vibration of the contemporary Kali Yuga world? Haven't you had enough of that in your life to see that that's not going to give you what you want? It's just going to give you more misery, more anxiety, more suffering. So Jeev Jago, Gaura Chandra Bole. Lord Chaitanya is saying, wake up. You're sleeping in the lap of a witch called Maya. I want to suck your blood, dearie. And so wake up from that illusory comfort of Maya's lap and take to the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, which will save you and make you very happy, which is all you really wanted to begin with, was just to be happy. All right, anyone else? Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.